Ladies and gentlemen, it is good to be back, and it is very good to be back in a space that is somehow remarkably more temperate than our old studio.
Yeah, it is kind of shocking how much of a sauna that old place was, but we're good here. But
We moved again. Now the walls are stone. Isaiah's in the same place though. He's just chilling, over there in his his fortress of goonitude.
I don't say that. I only I only change locations once every year, like a good Christian. Okay, I don't except when I don't. But
and the Lord saith, "Thou shalt not move more than once per year."
Yeah, that's I could probably make that be in there if I thought about it hard enough.
If you told people it was in there, they would believe you.
Probably. I have people say some wild stuff. They'll just be like, "Oh, well, Wendigoon said in one of his uploads that the Bible wants you to actually," they'll say something like, gorge yourself or eat as much as you can or something like that. I'm like, I don't even know how you would start to say I did something like that, but people do it all the time though. So you can't move. That's my new
all right.
take from the Bible.
So new sect. It's like Mormonism, but the only rule is you can't move.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
But you can keep the sister wives, which is the best part.
It just sounds like a weird version of red light, green light.
Oh my god. Did you know about the Mormon sect that moved to Mexico after the
got shot up?
Yeah.
Those guys? Yeah.
Just one of the weirdest things in history, in my opinion. But
it's very strange. And then they all died.
Oh yeah.
Very brutal cartel killing, yeah.
I told you about how the Mormons made their way to where Salt Lake City is via the same trail blazed by the Donner Party, right?
Yes. Yeah.
One of my favorite, what is that, butterfly effect? Yeah, one of my favorite little butterfly effect things.
Where did Joseph Smith get shot to death at?
I cannot remember.
He was, or maybe not shot to death.
Honestly, we got to do a video on the history of Mormonism.
He was killed somewhere before.
Yeah,
they got out there. I know that.
Yeah, it was Brigham Young that actually led them.
Yes, he's the one who actually got there. Yeah.
I saw somebody pointed out. I can't remember who it was that Islam and Mormonism have weirdly similar breakdowns in terms of their histories, in terms of the sectarian differences. Because basically the way it broke out is that most Mormons followed Brigham Young, but some Mormons followed the line of Joseph Smith, just like how there's Sunnis and Shias. How there was one line, how basically they kept polygamy, and there were a whole bunch of similarities to the way the two religions developed. And I was like, that is fascinating.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, you look at it and you're interesting how the two main Abrahamic religions that came around after Christianity had such similar breakdowns at the general level. Of course, that's bird's eye view. There's not a ton of similarities between them once you dig into it, but the whole no alcohol, no caffeine, there are a lot of weird little things that you're I wonder why those are there.
That's interesting.
But anyway, I mean, what we're talking about today is the older ones, the older two religions.
I will say, just considering we were talking about super chats beforehand,
yes,
we might be in semi-luck unlucky because YouTube is not registering them coming in and saving them, so we might just have to go with whatever we can see.
Oh, weird. We might be able to get back to them.
Exactly. That's even better. Give us money, and then we don't have to do anything about it.
Well, I think we should be able to pull up in Streamlabs what the super chats were. They should register through Streamlabs if you want to check.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure
time
it out.
comes.
But yeah, that said, for super chats, just because we've had a tendency on this show for there to be so many that we can't actually get through them, we are cutting off. Isaiah actually has to be out of here by 8:30 our time. So 8:30 to show time.
It's like an hour and a half.
Yeah, hour and a half basically.
From that,
so we're gonna cut to them a little bit earlier than usual, probably at 7:45.
What the heck am I looking at? You guys have different camera angles going on.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
What the heck?
We've got a whole lot of stuff happening.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah.
I hate you. It's ridiculous. Okay.
Well, this is what happens.
Hey, we're a little bit behind the rest of the people in the space. We got to have a technological advantage. We're kind of.
I can't stand you.
We're still small.
Well, as as good at this stuff as we are, as you saw before we came on live, obviously we just had to.
We know everything
we
about.
have to continuously complicate it, just considering we've mastered every level. So
where the YouTube stream is delayed, I just got to the part where you cycled through the cameras and it almost gave me a seizure. That was brutal.
All right. Well, to finish what I was saying, we will go to super chats probably at 7:45. So we will answer super chats that came in before 7:45 in the order they were received.
An hour of Bible talk, or like 50 minutes Bible talk, and then like 45 minutes answer questions and stuff like that. Good split. Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. That's for how this show goes down. That's probably the best way to handle it. So anything that comes in before 7:45, we will Aiden and I will absolutely get to, and Isaiah will get to everything he can before 8:30 rolls around. All right. So, and that's probably a good thing because this is more Isaiah's territory than it is mine. For this episode. So
which it's funny, as you said that, I remembered I left my Bible downstairs. I will be right back.
It's okay, you can have mine.
Okay, yeah, just hold it up to the screen and also write everything I say really quick.
Impeccable.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. How are people feeling in the chat right now?
They're good. They said my volume was low, and yeah, that's purely because I talk very quietly, shockingly enough.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that, like, in the studio, if you were to be sitting on the other side of the room, I am much louder than Thornbury is.
Yeah, generally, because he has so much more stage experience, he just naturally...
No. We could make it easy on me, and we could say, oh, Aiden's an experienced performer. He's been on stage. That's what he did for, a decade and a half. But in reality, what it is that I can't hear, and I'm Italian.
And why can't you hear?
All the time on stage.
Yeah.
I had a music director back in high school who told us rock stars don't wear earplugs, which was quite possibly one of the worst pieces of advice I've ever received in my life. Because I'm 26, and when Ella barks too loud, my ears hurt.
That's
horrific.
Yeah, I have the hearing that my stepfather has at 55.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah. It's rough, right. But
I'm not gonna yell. The nice man's back.
The nice man is back.
What are you yelling? What happened?
No, people were saying that I was low on audio, and then we were explaining why Mattis projects so much more than I do.
Yeah.
Audi. Yeah, we're fine now.
It's all good. But
this mic, by the way, I record on one channel. Is that coming through on your guys' sides, or is it just auto putting it on mono?
It's auto mono, it seems.
Okay, that's good, because otherwise everyone can only hear me out of their left ear, which is kind of cool. But
no, we're all right here. We should get you and then find like somebody who's like I don't know, a Satanist or something, and have you both run through one ear each. Do a little angel and devil kind of deal.
That's a good idea. Yeah. You know, the other day I that meme that's going around that's like me in the gym, and it's a diagram that's like right ear, classical music, left ear, the entire Bible spoken in Chinese. Like, so I found a YouTube video that's an hour of that.
Oh my god! So
it's very funny.
Wow. I want that, but I want it with like Cannibal Corpse in one ear and 12 Rules for Life in the other ear. I'm just curious how that would go down.
What a combo!
What a great idea.
I feel like it might be intense.
Yeah,
or give me that exact thing he has, but with John Cena doing the reading in Chinese.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, classic. All right. Anyway, we have an actual topic to discuss, which is the probably circa 30 AD roast of the Pharisees by Jesus of Nazareth. Quite similar to the roast of Tom Brady that occurred recently.
Only difference was that Jesus didn't have children to get embarrassed about it.
Well, I mean, and Tom Brady, Jesus doesn't have 7 rings.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Thank you.
All right. But anyway, yeah, realistically, we're talking about, the woes of the Pharisees. This is the section of the Bible where Jesus is coming down to Jerusalem, and he is just admonishing the Pharisees. This is all of the calling them hypocrites and listing their many, many wrongs, which, they did not take very well in the grand scheme of things, if you think about it. But Isaiah, you wanna kind of walk us through what's going on here?
Yeah. So this episode was my idea, so blame me if you hate it. Basically, I've been reading through Matthew, and I think one of the more interesting things that Matthew does is emphasize a lot of the kind of arguments, really, that the Pharisees tried to have with Jesus, and how Jesus, I mean, obviously being the Son of God, has such a way of wisdom to discredit their ideas, to put them up and stuff like that. And it eventually culminates in Matthew chapter 23. That's kind of like the final like put down of the Pharisees. And when you read it, you're like, oh, there's no wonder they wanted to kill him. So the Pharisees, for some historical knowledge, were the descendants of the priest of Moses. Effectively, they were the religious leaders over the Jewish people of the time. They were supposed to be the watchmen, so to speak. They were supposed to be the ones who kept the law, kept the prophets, stuff like that, leading to the coming of an eventual Christ. And they had kind of forgotten that point of their existence. And sure, they did things like keep the law and whatnot, but when Christ did come, they rejected him. They didn't think that he was a fit Christ. He didn't come as a king. They didn't like his interpretation of scripture a lot of the times because it was different from theirs. And rather than listening to him, they decided to reject him. Now, that doesn't mean all Pharisees did. Like, famously, Nicodemus in the Bible was a Pharisee that came to Jesus by night and then asked him, and then eventually decided that this is the Christ that the prophets had foretold. But by and large, most of the Pharisees sought to discredit him and then eventually sought to kill him, which, if you've read the Bible, spoilers, the latter is the one that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't worry, there's a crazy twist right after that retcons it. But in the book of Matthew, most of Matthew is very objective compared to some of the other gospels. Like, for example, Luke is a lot of different accounts. Mark is very much so about earthly ministry, and John is by far the most spiritual out of the gospels. Like, it's John inserting his own teachings basically into the life of Christ. Like, John opens with, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God and was God. It's very poetic, very spiritual in its connotation, whereas Matthew is like very like historic, like very like facts based. Yeah. So,
and just little aside, one of the reasons that the authorship of John is held so consistently over the other three gospels is that the way that the Gospel of John is written and the way that Revelation is written are very similar. Mm-hmm. So it gives credence to the fact that the same person wrote both.
Mm-hmm. It's also pretty like evident if you read through it that, I mean, just the way Jesus speaks, like at the end of Matthew, there's a whole segment where he's talking about the rapture and like Revelations and everything. And he's like, and one of you will interpret this. And then John's like, I was the most beloved disciple, and he asked me to interpret this. And then you read both John and Revelations, and it's clearly the same person who wrote them. And people are still like, who could this be?
Who was John of Patmos?
It's
like, I've got
John
an idea, my guy.
It's almost like the guy who only had to sign his name as John was the one who the whole church universally recognized at the time. Yeah. Sorry, didn't put his last name. But no, so Matthew's very interesting for a lot of those points. One of the more interesting points throughout Matthew is his conversations with the Pharisees. So we can go ahead and get into some of that if you like. We're eventually going to end up at 23, but there's some funny preludes to that I feel are worth mentioning for the sake of comedy. For example, Matthew chapter 19, this is while Jesus was still ministering with the disciples and whatnot. There's one point when the Pharisees come to him, and the Pharisees do this all the time, especially through Matthew. They try to ask Jesus trick questions. Like we're going to get to one about taxation here in a minute. They always try to throw something out there to make him look bad or to discredit him, right? Because they are like, the Pharisees were very well studied in scripture. Like all the laws of the Old Testament, they knew by heart. So they were smart about it, but they're talking to the guy who wrote the law. So they're not as smart as they think they are most of the time. So for example, Matthew chapter 19 says, when the Pharisees came to him, this is verse 3, they say, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? Put away means to divorce, basically, to separate from, right? So the Pharisees are like, oh, is it allowed? Can someone divorce their wife? And he answered and said unto them, he being Jesus here, he says, have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall twain be one flesh. So he's saying, like, you've read it what I am. They become one flesh. They're joined together. And he says, wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. Which, for one, is a very beautiful picture of marriage that God views you as a single entity now. Like God has put them together to one flesh. But he's also saying like that's how serious marriage is. Like you're both a single being now. So the Pharisees knew he would say that because that's what it says in the Old Testament. So they're like, aha, we got you. So they say, why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement to put her away? They're like, explain that, magic man. Explain how if that can't happen, why it exists. And Jesus says, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. I say unto you, whoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. So he's saying like, look, the reason that happened is because this is an imperfect world. It's a sin-cursed world. In a perfect world, you would be married to someone, love each other indefinitely forever, and then be joined together for eternity. But humanity comes into the equation. So to keep people, like it says, from fornication or from people who are, I mean, there's other examples in the Bible of abuse and stuff like that. Because sin has entered the world, sometimes that perfect joining has to be undone. That doesn't mean that marriage isn't still a sacred thing, but they thought they could get him with that. So sure enough, the Pharisees scurry off. Like in my head, they like visibly scurry off. And then the disciples have more conversations with him, and the teachings continued. Right?
I am curious about. We got this question a little while back on a non-Weird Bible show. It might have even been on one of my personals, but the verse, right after that, basically. Is about God, what is the word that I'm looking for? Sorry, not the verse right after that. I think it's in might be in 22. The one I'm thinking about is the one where he says that why is this so hard for me to focus on right now? That when they're in heaven, they are like the angels. It's the question about it's the Sadducees. Sorry, it's not the Pharisees. It's the Sadducees that ask him, and they say, it is our custom as Jews that when a man dies and has not had children, then his brother should marry the wife. Yeah,
I was actually about to get to that.
Oh, perfect.
Here in a second. Yeah. So that one's coming up in just a minute. So yeah, we'll get to that. So yeah, basically he has conversations with the disciples and whatnot. There's a lot of stuff about, suffer the little children, whatever. And then the next time the Pharisees decide to pull up is in chapter 20 is talk about new Christians, discord among disciples. I think it's chapter 21. I have all my notes here. I'm flipping through. Jesus answered. I'm reading all the first parts, like, is this the disciples or the Pharisees speaking? It's talking about the importance of baptism through chapter 21. He also, yes, this is what I want to mention. Chapter 21. That is the moment that everyone remembers or likes to quote from the Bible when he shows up to the temple and the Pharisees have made it into a house of merchandise. So Jesus is like, absolutely not. So he takes a bullwhip and he runs into the temple and says he went into the temple of God and cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple and overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seats of them that sold doves and said unto them, it is written, my house shall be called the house of prayer, but ye have made it into a den of thieves. So
which it goes so hard.
It goes incredibly hard. It's so good.
Can I just say, I was never aware that he went full indie.
Oh yeah, he had a whip. And it doesn't mention
idea.
Matthew, but in one of them he has a whip. Yeah.
Yeah, it's when people say like, what would Jesus do? The answer is often a lot more complicated than they're thinking it is.
Yeah, I mean, if I had,
there's normally layers to this.
Like the question was, like, what would Jesus do? And the issue was that your nearby church had set up a lending company. The answer is he would probably burn it to the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, like, immediately after that, I think people overlook this part. As soon as it says that he said you've made it into a den of thieves, the next verse says, and the blind and the lame, excuse me, I burped. And it sounded like I was getting choked up, but I just too much Coke. The blind and the lame came to him in the temple and he healed them, which is a beautiful picture of like once the money's out of the way, once like men aren't seeking to profit from it anymore, it becomes what it always was supposed to be, a place of healing, place of spiritualism. So that's a beautiful picture.
Yeah, I love that the line that's kind of taken from that the church is not a museum for the righteous, it is a hospital for the sick.
Yeah, I agree. And like Jesus does that a lot throughout studies. One of the funny ones, man, it may be further back. I think it's further back. I won't go back to it, but the abridged version is one time the Pharisees come to him, and it's on the Sabbath, which was a Saturday. So it's on a Saturday. You're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. It's part of the law, right? Jesus finds a lame man lying on the street. He goes up to him. He heals him. The man gets up and walks. So the man walks by the Pharisees and goes, "The man from Nazareth healed me." And the Pharisees go, "Healing? That could be considered work. You're not supposed to do that on the Sabbath." So they go find Jesus. They go, "Oh, ye man of the law." Like, "Oh, I thought you were a guy of the law. What are you doing healing on the Sabbath?" And Jesus says, "If your ox falls in a ditch, does thou wait till the next day to lift him out?" Like,
amazing.
If he's like, let's think about this. If you were to say trip and fall right now, would you just lie there till Sunday? Would you just wait around? Because it's work to do it.
I love the cables that some cities have around them, the fishing line.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Would you like to explain that? Well, I'll let you get in trouble for that
Sure.
one. I'm not going to explain it.
Well, there is a Jewish custom that on the Sabbath you are not to bring certain items in and out of the home. It's basically private spaces versus profane spaces. And so you're not supposed to bring something from the private domain into the public domain on the Sabbath. So I think the main reason it was created was so that women could take their children out in strollers on the Sabbath in the city. But this comes from a time period.
I've heard something about that, yeah.
This comes from a time period in which in the city meant something very different than it does today, where you typically, if you had a private residence in a city, unless you lived in a tenement, you probably had a courtyard. Like, it wasn't people living in these towering skyscrapers. The idea was that you're not bringing your private property out into the public square for all to see on the Sabbath. Yeah. It wasn't, I don't think the idea was, and I think the specific line is that you are not to bring your burdens out of the home. But I think, in my opinion, I think the Christian interpretation of this would be a burden is a labor, a job, something that you do for money. This is not something you do for money or survival. This is something you do because you need to take your child outside because the child needs sunlight. So certain sects interpret it as a much more literal thing where you can't bring anything out of the home, but by creating these, private spaces in public, it's a technicality where you can get around it. I think it's one of those things that as a Christian I look at and I'm like, well, that's a little silly, but I'm sure that the Jews have plenty of things they look at us and say, well, that's a little silly. So I'm sure that the whole eating the flesh and blood of our God every Sunday is probably something they look at with some side eye.
Yeah. I'm sure transubstantiation and whatnot is strange. I'm not Catholic, so I can also say it's strange. I don't care for it. But I don't say that or like laugh at or whatever to say that like, oh, Jesus would also smack down the idea of that everyone has their own beliefs, their own system with it. But in the Christian belief that the law was for a time, things like that aren't supposed to be applicable anymore. Again, it's just difference between like Christian and Judaistic beliefs. But basically Jesus was like, which that's a saying that I still hear through the church to this day when people say they're going to be out of church on Sunday because they're busy or whatever. My dad used to always say my ox is in a ditch. I don't want to work today, but I have to. Yeah, my ox is in a ditch. I grew up hearing that a lot. So anyway, we'll skip it forward a bit into Matthew chapter 21. A lot of the previous chapters is about stuff between the disciples, disagreements, things they're talking about. The next one we were already in chapter 21 because that's when they got ran out. That's right. Later on in chapter 21, there is a portion when this is in verse 23. It says Jesus comes into the temple and the chief priests and people come unto him. And this is after Jesus. For one, Jesus had already ran out all the money collectors and stuff like that, and is now having a healing. So the priests and the elders, basically the Pharisees, show up and they're like, what right have you to do any of this? Like, who do you think you are? And Jesus says in verse 24, it says, and Jesus answered and said unto them, I also will ask you one thing, which if ye tell me, I and likewise will tell you by what authority I do these things. So Jesus's question is the baptism of John, whence was it? From heaven or of men? Now, Jesus has pulled a Pharisee on them and is now asking them a trick question. Because John the Baptist was a figure widely known through the time. We understand as Christians that John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus Christ. He would have these massive church meetings. I believe, if I recall right, there's stuff about him also performing healings and miracles and stuff like that. The people of the time loved John the Baptist, right? However, John the Baptist explicitly was a follower of Christ, right? He would heal and feed people and then say, I am the forerunner. I am one who comes for Jesus Christ. Probably my favorite John the Baptist quote in the whole Bible is when the Pharisees come to him and here he's been doing all this healing. They go, who are you? Are you someone who says he is God? And John the Baptist says, I am merely the voice of one crying in the wilderness. He was like, don't mind me. I'm just some old hag out here in the woods.
Just a guy being a dude.
Yeah, I'm just dudes being dudes out here healing the blind and whatnot, like boys do.
Yeah.
Like, can boys not hang out anymore? Is that a crime?
What do you mean we can't get together and just heal?
Like I'm just trying to grill.
But in his teaching, so the people loved John the Baptist, and he would, like, the Pharisees wanted to get him, but he would narrowly avoid them typically. And anytime that John the Baptist would mention Christ, he would always say, he that cometh after me is greater than he that cometh before me, referring to the prophets and stuff like that. So think about that. You have a guy who can perform miracles, who does these mighty teachings and stuff. And he's saying the guy who I'm here just as a forerunner for, I'm like the entry level for him. He is greater than me and every prophet who has come before. Elijah, Moses, greater than all them. So the people loved him, but John the Baptist was explicitly Christian. So when Jesus, in front of the people and the Pharisees, says, John the Baptist, was he baptizing of men or of heaven? If the Pharisees answer of heaven, well, that means Jesus is Christ. That's not what they're okay with. That goes against their stuff. But if they say he was just of man, then that's denying John the Baptist any holiness, right? Because the people around them at this time full-heartedly believed that John the Baptist was, a healer, was a divine figure, right? So to say that he's a man is to imply that those tricks were demonic in nature, that they were from paganism and stuff like that. So that will also get him in hot water.
We should probably do a whole episode on John the Baptist.
Oh, fascinating guy.
That might just be necessary, honestly.
Yeah, he's not only a fascinating figure, but very important to the biblical canon. Also, the way he dies is quite tragic. So Herod Antipas, I think. No, is Herod the Tetrarch, because he was the son of Antipas, I believe. So, yeah. Because Herod the Great and Herod the Antipas are the same person, if I recall right. And then Herod the Great, the one who ordered the killings of the babies, he dies while Jesus is still a child, which is why Jesus flees from Egypt. Herod the Tetrarch comes to power. And then during this time, John the Baptist gets arrested or whatever. But Herod doesn't want to kill him because John the Baptist is a beloved figure of the town. So the reason John the Baptist was arrested, by the way, I think this is in Matthew, it might be in John. The reason he's arrested is because he saw Herod's wife just out somewhere. No, it was his sister, I believe. Yes, it was Herod's sister. He saw Herod's sister out somewhere and was just like, your marriage isn't legitimate, by the way. It was just like, he called her like a fornicator or something. I don't know what the historic reason for that is. Maybe she had left someone to marry him. Maybe he had done the same. Whatever the reason, John the Baptist was like, your marriage is illegitimate. So she has him thrown in jail. So now John the Baptist is sent in jail, and Herod's like, I can't kill this guy because then the people are going to be really mad. But I can't let him go because then my sister's going to be really mad. So this is so disgusting that later on, the daughter of his sister, so his niece, right? His niece performs, she dances for him and it pleases him. So, which is, yeah, not nice. And then he says, I think it even says she sits in his lap. He says, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. And she had been put up to do this by her mother. And she says, I want the head of John the Baptist. So him all geeked up over his niece is like, okay, and has John the Baptist beheaded. Yeah. And the head of John the Baptist is served to Herod's niece on a silver plate, which is where we get the phrase head on a silver platter.
I did just look it up. So just to clarify, it was that he may not have even married her. It was that the relationship, he said it's not lawful for you to have her. And it was Herod's sister-in-law.
Okay. It was his brother that married her.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
gotcha.
it wasn't
still his
lawful,
niece, but through different. Yeah. I see. Yeah. I gotcha. Yeah. So Herod's just like, you shouldn't do that, right? I mean, John the Baptist is like, you shouldn't do that, right? And then he gets arrested and executed for it.
It's kind of like if you're wandering down the street and some dude who's known as like the town's priest just calls your girlfriend a whore.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
pretty much.
You probably won't take kindly to it, even if he's right.
Probably not. No.
It's also immediately after Jesus hears what's happened to John the Baptist that he goes and performs the miracle of the feeding the 5,000 with the fish.
Yeah. It also just for a quick little note on why why Jesus's family escaped to Egypt and why that worked. Egypt was just like Judea, part of the Roman Empire, but Egypt was fully under the control of Rome, whereas Herod was technically a semi-autonomous king. So he could get away with a lot more, and his power did not extend in any way to Egypt. So because it wasn't the Romans who came and said, kill all the firstborn, it was just Herod.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, not the firstborn, all the boys born during this period.
Yeah.
It wasn't... Herod had no power to enforce that beyond Sinai.
Yeah. So that's the basic John the Baptist. So the question here, Jesus says, John the Baptist, he was baptizing. Was it of man or of heaven? So it says that they reasoned with themselves, saying, if we shall say from heaven, he will say unto us, why did you not believe him then? Because if he was baptizing people of heaven, why did we, not like that guy and have
clarity on this one? John baptized Jesus.
Yes.
That's why this is important.
Yeah. John baptized Jesus, and that's when the Holy Spirit descended and all that. And it says, but if we shall say of men, we fear the people, for all hold John as a prophet. So they're basically trapped. And it says, they answered Jesus and said, we cannot tell. And he said unto them, neither I tell you by what authority I do these things.
Basically, get a warrant.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I love these stories when Jesus is as sassy as he comes across, at least as he seems to.
I tweeted one the other day where Jesus was like, he was talking to, Jesus said, he was talking to Peter, and he was talking about the Pharisees, and he said, they are the blind that leadeth the blind, and both are astray. And Peter says, declare unto us this parable. And Jesus says, are ye not without understanding? Yeah. So they're just blind men leading blind. What do you mean by that? Are you stupid?
This is the first pope, everybody. This is the rock. The rock upon which the church was
built. This is the rock of the church. This guy right here.
It's little stories like that I'd love to see like slightly modern takes on, just so that way we could have that type of like modern English used where it's like, are you stupid?
Yeah. like Jesus just stops, turns, looks at him.
Yeah. Like, really?
Bruh.
One of my favorite ones is when Jesus is departing with the disciples. No, they're arriving at the coast of Galilee, and they know they're going to run into the Pharisees. And it says that the disciples were talking to each other, and they're like, we forgot to bring food. We're stupid. Like, how are we going to find food? Which Jesus had just told them, like, when you set out for me, do not bring with thee a package for the day, because to the disciples, he was like saying, show your faith, you will be provided for. But as soon as they land, they're like, we forgot food. Jesus comes down in the boat to them and says, beware the leaven of the Pharisees. So, okay, let's take a guess here. Jesus just prompted shows up to them and says, "Beware the leaven of the Pharisees."
Leaven being bread.
Leaven's a thing you use for bread, right? So he's saying, beware the bread of the Pharisees. Now, pop quiz. Do we think Jesus is talking about bread, or do we think he means like the things they say, the things they'll do? Be careful in our voyage into the city. Probably the second one, right? As soon as Jesus leaves, it says they turn to each other and say, "It is because we are without bread." The disciples are like, he's mad at us because we forgot bread.
He didn't declare the parable, so how are they supposed to know?
How are they supposed to know what he means?
I love how Jesus, like, if you think about the story,
he picked normal people.
Exactly.
To
like,
he
didn't go in. Like, it would be much less believable if he had showed up with a guy who was like a master blacksmith and someone who's a master orator, and he's got his posse of like really impressive dudes behind him. But no, Jesus of Nazareth, the Messiah of Israel, shows up with some dudes who work down the street at the convenience store, a guy who's an IT dude at the local dealership. Like, I mean, he just grabbed a bunch of fishermen and was hey, you're going to be fishers of men. There is one point
during the Last Supper when they're all gathered around, Jesus says, "One of you will betray me tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever I dip the bread in the cup to and hand the bread to, he is who will betray me." And then Judas says, "Is it I, Lord?" And Jesus says, "Thou hast said it," dips the bread, hands it to him, and says, "What thou must do, do quickly." Judas gets up and walks outside. And the disciples say to each other, "He must have sent him to get more bread."
They're really big on bread. Can we just get a Bible supercut of all the times that the disciples talk about bread?
There has to be. Yeah. What are we going to do? There's no bread. What are we going to do without bread?
People are going to get upset.
Did I mention I think I mentioned during the Easter one how Jesus knowing what Judas is doing, and Judas knowing that he's doing what he's doing, and Jesus knowing that Judas is doing what he's doing because he's supposed to be doing it, kind of mirrors the relationship between God and Satan.
I don't know if you said that.
I can't remember if I brought that up, but you get, like, if you look at Job, for example, Satan comes from his wanderings, in and about the earth, and he's like, "I don't know, man. These people only believe in you because you give them nice stuff." And God's like, "All right, go screw with Job. See what happens." Like, you get all these instances in the Bible where God is basically, like, Satan is not, everybody gets this idea, I think it's from Paradise Lost, that Satan's like this dualist evil god who's always on the other side, always working in opposition. And it's like, he does serve a role in assessing people and providing challenges and trying to pull them astray.
Wasn't it in Job? Because we just used Job in a recent video. That's why it's kind of fresh in our minds. But isn't there a divine council that the story of Job brings up? Is there any background on that?
Oh, that's its own video. That's its own. Because
I remember you being like, they kind of like rung your bell a little bit. You're like, wait a second here.
Yeah.
But yeah, just quick.
Yeah, let's quickly just dabble into the genealogy and Christendom of Job. Yeah, just quick trip, 15 minutes in and out. Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of my favorite little bits is that you do see all of these, like, you see that the way Jesus treats his disciples is not entirely dissimilar from some of the interactions we see between God and some of his angels, the named ones.
Interesting.
There's a lot of parallels in the book.
Anyway, you were saying about the angry bad men.
Yeah. So anyway, the Pharisees are being wonky or whatever. I'm going to save until like the end the parable Jesus gives in chapter 21 because I think it's the most brutal thing Jesus ever said to anyone. And I feel like it'll hit harder after we look at some more examples of why the Pharisees deserve to put down like this. So after that, Jesus, there's other scenes, other teachings and stuff like that. He speaks to them in parables. The next one I want to look at is in Matthew chapter 22. Okay. So he had just given a parable about the servants and the wedding, which is actually a very interesting parable about like where the Gentiles rank in comparison to Israel, why the gift that was to one is now as many. It's a good parable. The Pharisees hear that and don't care about any of it. So in verse 15, it says, "Then went the Pharisees and took counsel how they might entangle him in his talk. So here it's expressly saying the Pharisees are trying to find a way to trip him up and make him look stupid, right? So it says, and they sent out unto him their disciples with the Herodians. The Herodians are the people who are effectively guardsmen, loyalists, what have you, to Herod, right? So Herod is the king over Judea at the time because the kingdom was split up, I believe, for Israel, so to speak, Jewish people. So it's saying that he sent out with the people who are the followers of Herod, saying, Master, we know that thou art true and teach us the way of God in truth. They always do this too. Anytime that they're trying to trick, the devil does this every time he's mentioned in the Bible too. He always starts with words of praise. So they go up to him trying to trick him and say, Master, we know that thou art true and teach us the way of God in truth. Neither carest thou for any man, for thou regardest not the person of men. So they're kissing up. And then they say, Tell us therefore, what thinkest thou? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar or not? Now, here's what they've done. They are standing inside of a Roman occupied land with followers of the kingdom of Israel, right? With loyalists. So if Jesus said, and the tribute to Caesar is basically saying, should you pay tax to the Roman government? Mm-hmm. That's what they're saying. Should you pay tax? Is that lawful? Which was a very touchy subject for an occupied group of people, as you could imagine. Yeah. So if Jesus says, no, you shouldn't pay tax, well, that's illegal. you can't, as a teacher in Rome, be like, everyone should quit paying tax. If he says, yes, you should pay tax, well, that's going to make everyone there mad because no one likes the Roman government. No one likes dealing with them, especially not the Herodians who are standing in front of him, right? So they've basically asked him a trick question. It says, but Jesus perceived their wickedness and says, why tempt ye me, ye hypocrites? Like that, because he already knows the answer, he knows what to say. But as soon as he says, he's like, what? Like, why? That's your question? He just gave a whole story too, 14 verses talking about like the divinity of the people of Israel and how that's now spread to the world, and the divineness of God and forgiveness. And they're like, what about taxes? And he's like, what? Like that's what your comeback is? So Jesus just says, show me the tribute money. Just show me money. And says, and they brought unto him a penny. So it says, and he saith unto them, who is this image on the superscription? So he's holding up a Roman penny, right? It says, and they said unto him, Caesar's. Then saith he unto them, render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. So he's saying Caesar's face is on the money. If you want to dedicate your life, your earnings, everything to collecting Roman money, then give it back to the Roman government. And everything else, things that are of God's, which is yourself, your soul, whatnot, give that unto God. So he's basically given a split answer that neither side can really be mad at, which is not what the Pharisees are looking for. There's also another point in the book of Matthew when Jesus is once again asked about taxation. It's earlier in the book.
Yeah, I had it a second ago.
It's when the disciples show up to the city and they're asking, or no, sorry, the people of the city ask, does your master pay tribute? Yeah. Talking about Jesus. And Jesus basically says like, well, we as like people of Christ are a bit beyond that, but lest we cause trouble. He said, he tells one of the disciples, go out to the sea, catch a fish. You're going to pull in the fish and there's going to be money in its mouth. Take the money. There's your tax. And then the miracle happens and the money appears and whatnot. But Jesus is saying here that as Christians, as followers of God, sure, we're on to greater things. Governments are corrupt, taxation, all that. But if we allow like our want to not pay taxes, our want to give up money to stand in the way of discipleship, to stand in the way of us being Christians, to like, no one's going to hear you out on what you have to say about God and forgiveness if you're trying to fight the government every chance you can get. I say this to someone who deeply despised taxation with everything in him. What is more important than my despising of taxes is my love for God, right? And if I let me hating the government for what I consider very just reasons, if I let that get in the way of being a Christian and an example, then I love money more than I love God, and that can't happen. So that's basically what Jesus is saying and what his answer comes down to. Not to say that's always good and that the government's great for doing that, and not that they would be judged accordingly, but that I shouldn't let that get in the way of my Christian walk, basically. So anyway, this answer Pharisees aren't fans of. It says, when they had heard these words, they marveled and left him and went their way. So immediately after that, it says the same day, the Sadducees show up. And this is what you were asking about earlier, Aiden, or Aiden number one.
Yeah. Oh, cool. I'm back to me, Aiden 1. Good.
Yeah, for now.
I imagine that he's got like a board with our names and stars on it.
I don't know what stars I got taken away from me or why, but
yeah, just
I'll live with it.
No. It's just I set it back to him being to Mattis being 8-1 because it's funny when he loses it.
That is fair. It's a valid point.
I can live with that.
So, anyway, the same day, this is still in chapter 22. The same day, it says, when they had heard these words, they marveled. It says, the same day came in the Sadducees, which say that there is no resurrection, and asked him. So they're saying that there's not a coming back, no resurrection after the dead, stuff like that. They're basically saying that they don't agree with Jesus either. So the Pharisees just got done asking their question about taxes. Now the Sadducees show up because remember, Jesus is teaching in front of the temple. He has thousands of listeners at this point, right? And they also can't sell stuff right now, so they're really upset about it. So the Pharisees tried their trick with the tax money. That didn't work. So now another group comes forward and they have a question. It says in verse 24, they say, Master, Moses said, because remember, Moses is the one who made the law and is pretty much the closest thing they've had to like a God or Christ figure on earth, because he set up the law, he set the rules to follow, and that's what they're to follow until Christ comes to earth. Now Christ has come to earth, they don't believe him, so their highest authority is still the words of Moses, right? Which was, I would argue, the highest authority up until Christ, right? So it says, Moses said, this is the Sadducees talking, if a man die, having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up seed unto his brother. Now, this was a part of the law, again, that was established in Moses' day. If you have a wife, right, if you two have a kid and then you die, your children are supposed to watch over the mother, right? That's how it worked in the law. That's how I would argue it should work, theoretically, right? Like, if your dad dies, take care of your mom, right? But if you have no children, the way the law was is that that man's brother is to marry your wife. Now, this is a different time historically. This was not a time when you can go out and live by yourself. The only way people survived was in households that had things like, water and a food supply or whatnot. You can't go out and leave. You have to be accepted somewhere. So this isn't saying that women need to be subjugated to the same family. It's saying that if your brother dies, you should be responsible and take care of his wife. And also men had several wives, stuff like that, etc. Very different than modern age, basically.
It might come across as being like the woman is being treated like property. It's the opposite. It's that the man is being ordered to take responsibility for a family member.
Yeah. If your brother dies, take his seed, watch over her.
Yeah. And being a wife at the time also didn't necessarily mean that you were going to have to bear children and be sometimes it meant that you were just a part of the household.
Yeah.
So a different time.
Yeah, look out for her, basically. So that's what the law of Moses says, right? So the Sadducees come and they say that. And it says, now there were with us 7 brethren. So they're posing a hypothetical, right? Okay, what if there were 7 brothers? And the first, when he had married a wife, deceased, and having no issue, left his wife unto his brother. Likewise, the second also. And the third, unto the 7th. The last of all, for one, I would immediately assume the woman is killing the man. Like there's no other way around that.
Oh boy.
It says, and last of all, the woman died also. So part of what Jesus said, when this is in his earlier teachings, that if 2 people are joined in the flesh, right, through marriage, that they are one in God's eye, right? You're joined together, you are one. And Jesus says on the resurrection, you are resurrected together, you are together. A bunch of people ask, will I know my spouse in heaven? Yes, that is very clear throughout the entire Bible. There's several times where it talks about the eternity. Ruth and Boaz are mentioned as being together for eternity, stuff like that. Yes, the marriage is a very serious thing throughout the Bible, which is why there's such a heaviness placed on the terms of divorce, right? It needs to be something more than I decide I don't like this person today. So they're like, okay, so marriage is important. You're going to be together in the resurrection. But now we have this scenario we posed where a woman marries 7 different brothers. They say, therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be of the 7? For they all had her. So they're saying, all right, so she marries 7 different men, and all those men die. Now in the resurrection, heaven and whatnot, whose wife is she? Who does she get to spend eternity with? Which is a question that in earnest is posed today within churches and stuff like that, right? If your wife passes away and you remarry, which is, biblically fine, what is eternity then? You've had 2 different wives. Like, how does that go? And Jesus says, he answered unto them and said, ye do err, not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of God. For in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven, which is what you had mentioned earlier.
I asked mainly because I got raked over the coals for my answer to this a few weeks ago, which was very similar to your answer.
Basically, what he's saying here, and okay, let me rewind a little bit to give it more explanation, because what Jesus is accusing them is they don't know the scripture. What the scripture says is that marriage is a gift, right? That is given to us time and time in the Bible. In the beginning, Garden of Eden, we were supposed to just be happy. There never be a wrong thing happen to us, whatever. And the first gift that he gave us was each other, right? Companionship, the gift of each other. God originally created Adam to be his companion on earth. When he saw that Adam was lonely, he gave him something to complete him. He took a rib from his side, made woman, the 2 were joined as one flesh. Despite our sin, despite our choice from sin, God didn't take that gift away from us. He still allowed us that gift of having each other. And that's clear throughout the whole Bible, that we are each other's gift. However, this earth is a fraction, not even a fraction, it's a iota. The best moment you have ever had on planet Earth is not even a corner of what heaven is, of what eternity is, right? Our mind cannot comprehend what existence without the concept of bad is, right? Because that's all we've known. People, you hear the thing like, oh, well, I'd get bored in heaven. Bored is a human concept. That is a thing that would not exist. Like, we can't even fathom what that's like, right? Because of that, marriage is a piece of God's divinity in the boundaries of earth. Because like in earth, we have to be away from each other. People die, right? And then the other one's left. Like, there's tragedy that suffices it, but heaven is an eternity of being joined together, of having each other. So the institution of marriage is not needed in heaven. So this woman in this hypothetical who has had 7 different husbands, she doesn't need to be the wife of one of them, because marriage is a thing that exists on earth. She has eternal joy with 7 other people who have no malice, no wrongdoing, no ill intent, anything like that. It is communal love forever, effectively. Jesus is saying, like, how is that? What? Like marriage in heaven, that doesn't even exist. You're asking the wrong questions from the wrong angles. So effectively, he's telling them that they have like 5 misunderstandings leading up to the incorrect question, effectively. That's what I meant by saying you will be as the angels of God and stuff, right? Like the angels aren't given in marriage, but they're given in eternal love and joy with each other, which is what we'll be given to. You'll still have your partner on earth and stuff like that, but you won't be married, because the point of marriage is on earth is a lifelong commitment to another person, to be with them, exactly, to not do them wrong, to take care of them. You don't need that in heaven, because that's the baseline. That's what everyone is to each other all the time. You don't need that line. You'll still have each other, but we don't need barriers, because there's nothing to have barriers from. Like, yeah. So basically that's what Jesus is saying here. And the answer, therefore, to us in the modern age who have similar questions, basically. The best of both worlds, effectively.
Right.
So, and the Pharisees, as you could imagine, they don't like that. They don't like that answer, because it says, he goes on and says, have you not read of the dead, or of the resurrection of the dead? It says, and when the multitude heard this, they were astonished at his doctrine.
Classic
which is the
meme.
people who are listening. Classic meme. They were astonished.
Blocked. All of you are blocked. None of you are free from sin.
The basics. Yeah, the baseline. It says, but when the Pharisees heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him, saying, Master, which is the greatest commandment of the law? So now they're just throwing a Hail Mary, right? All 10 of the laws given by Moses are the 10 laws to keep, right?
Mhm.
So if Jesus says one's greater, if Jesus says thou shalt not kill is the most important, it's like, oh, well, does that mean adultery is less bad? Does that mean that? But look, basically there's no real answer to it, right?
Mhm.
So they're like, what's the greatest commandment of the law? Just trying to find something to trip him up in front of an audience.
Mhm.
It says, then Jesus saith unto him, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the laws of the prophets. So he's like, actually, the greatest commandment isn't even a commandment. It's not even on there. It's if you love God and then love people around you, you're gonna accidentally follow all 10 commandments. How's that?
Well, if you think about what the rest of them are, like, and you follow it from the line of logic there, yeah. Like,
yeah. I mean, he says on this hang all the laws, right?
Honor thy father and thy mother. That is loving thy neighbors as you love yourself.
Don't steal, don't kill, don't commit adultery. Yeah, like that's all naturally. If you love God and love people as much as you love yourself, guess what? You're accidentally going to do all of those things. Yeah. So he invented a new commandment that is, in fact, the most important commandment. So it says, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them. So now they've asked him all these questions. He's like, hold on, I want to ask you something. It says, he says unto them, what think ye of Christ? Whose son is he? Okay, so this is important, and there's some prophecy you need to understand to get to this. Isaiah and Jeremiah, I believe, and it's also mentioned some by I think Nathan mentions it maybe, or no, sorry, Daniel. Like the Christ is a title that has been mentioned throughout the Old Testament. And what the prophet said is that the Christ will be the son of David, will be in the lineage of David. He will come to save their people from their sins. And they give all the specifics of the prophecy that confirm Jesus Christ as the Christ, right? That confirm him as the son of God. So Jesus is sitting there knowing right well that he's Christ. And then these guys who don't think he's Christ. So the Pharisees' most important religious figures are Moses, as discussed, David, and then like the other prophets, right? They're the most important people within the religion. So Jesus says, what think ye of Christ? Because they believe that there will be a Christ. They just don't believe that Jesus is him, right? So they say, whose son is he? And they say unto him, oh, well, he's the son of David. Like we all know that, right? Like it's in there that the Christ will be the son of David. It says, and he saith unto them, Jesus said unto them, how then doth David in spirit call him Lord? Saying, this is a quote from the Old Testament, where it says, the Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou on my right hand till I make thine enemies thy footstool. This is a part when David is talking about the Christ, and he says, the Christ will make me at his right hand, and says, thy enemies will be my footstool, right? So Jesus says, if David call him Lord, how is he his son? So he's asking a doctrine question that can't really explain, right? If Christ is to be the son of David, how is he also the Lord over David, right? That doesn't make any sense. And it says, and no man was able to answer him a word. Neither durst any man from that day forth ask him any more questions.
Incredible.
Yes. They're just like, okay, that because what he's done there is he's made them look foolish. The answer to the riddle, so to speak, that Jesus gave, we know what it is. The Christ is both holy God and holy man. As a man, yes, he is a son of David. He is a descendant, but he is also the son of God, which is greater than David. That's the answer to the question. But the Pharisees don't understand what the Christ is and reject Jesus as being the Christ. So that's why they couldn't answer it. So basically, they try to make
David.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're expecting a king. They're expecting a ruler, not this carpenter from Nazareth. That's not going to fly. So they've been coming to him all day asking questions. And Jesus is like, hey, before you go, riddle me this. Whose son is, who's Christ? What is a Christ? And they can't answer. He's like, oh, well, look at that. You've got silly questions. I've got silly questions. Let's go back and forward.
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Exactly. It says they didn't talk to him anymore after that, which is really funny.
It's the equivalent of somebody walking away in the middle of like a Twitter argument. Just like stop it, not responding anymore. You're just like, okay, I win. It's over.
Just walk off. Yeah, basically.
Take a lap.
Over the course, and I encourage you to read this for yourself. We don't have to get into the specific verses over, but over the course of Matthew chapter 23, Jesus, like,
for 39 verses straight.
For 39 verses straight, it is like, yeah, you know that meme that's like, stop, he's dead.
Yeah.
Like, don't keep going. It's that for the Pharisees. It is 39 verses of just like punching as hard as he can about what they are, because it says, then spake Jesus to the multitude. Also, this is an important thing to know historically. Chapter and verse segments were made. They're new. They were made to better understand the Bible for us, so we can, because otherwise I'd be like, go to Matthew and like turn maybe 40 pages and maybe we'll be in the same place, right? Chapter verse denotation was made just to make it easier to read.
Part of the reason they memorized the Bible is because it was easier to just draw it directly from memory than to give somebody a citation.
Yeah. Because it was like, it's just giant letters that are like, hundreds of pages long. Good luck.
Part of the reason that so many not early necessarily, but Bible translations from the Latin period are into vernacular, so into German, into English, into Spanish, whatever. Part of the reason they're so hard to do, and the reason so many of them were so inaccurate compared to the modern ones that have the Dead Sea Scrolls to look at and that have the Septuagint and all this. Part of the reason they had to rely so heavily on the Septuagint when writing vernacular Bibles out of the Latin is because not only did Latin Bibles have no verses at all, and they basically had, I'm not sure they even had chapters early on, but they had no verses. Chapters were not nearly as useful, and Latin didn't have definite articles or articles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Latin's hard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I took 1 year of it in high school, and that's all I needed.
Yeah. Between Latin having no articles, no definite articles, and Hebrew having no vowels, I am shocked we have a Bible. But like it's,
and I will say, like, the reason I bring that up is to say that a lot of the times when you're reading the Bible, just keep reading and it's the same story. Like there's not, breaks or stuff like that. Because the first verse of chapter 23 says, then spake Jesus to the multitude. So this is like while he's still in that conversation, he tells them to leave. And then he turns to the multitude and he said, this is one of the hardest like chapters in the Bible. He starts by saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sat in Moses' seat, which is true, right? They're the office that was first set up by Moses. It says, all therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do. So he's saying, because they're in the office of Moses, respect them. Like if they tell you to do something of the law, then that law is holy and of Moses. But do not ye after their works, for they say and do not.
Yeah. He's basically like, they're giving you the correct information about what you're supposed to be doing here. That said, they're also not doing it themselves. Like they're hypocrites.
He goes in. It's insane. Like no wonder they killed this guy 3 chapters later, right? Because after that he says, for they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. All their works they do to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries. Which is a great word.
It's a garment. A part of a garment.
Because right after that says, and enlarge the borders of their garments. He's like, notice how they always wear like shiny clothes, haughty stuff. Do you think that's on accident? He says they love the upper room at feast, and the chief sits in the synagogue, and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men master, master, or rabbi, rabbi. He's saying they love all the attention they get from it. But be not ye called rabbi, for one is your master, even Christ, and all ye are brethren. And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father which is in heaven. And everyone who's Catholic turned their heads away at that verse. And And neither be ye called masters, for one is your master, even Christ. So he's saying that even their title, the way they phrase themselves, is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I won't read the entire thing, but some of the verses in here, he says, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer them that are entering to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Woe unto you, for ye devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayer. Therefore ye shall receive the greater damnation. He is saying, like, you people who take money from widows, eat up widows' houses.
Mhm.
Like, man, he's saying this in the temple, the place they're supposed to be right now. Like this, it's in a wild. I mean, he's right, but for anyone else to say this would be absurd. Like, thankfully Jesus said it, because then we could say it's absolutely right, like what the politics of the time was, so to speak. But yeah, it's no wonder they kill this guy here in a little bit.
Ye serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? Like,
Brutal.
Ye blind guides, which strain at a gnat and swallow a camel.
the man had a way with words.
Yep.
And we got, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. He's basically sitting there like, you are the line of the very same people who constantly led us astray, and I had to come back and direct you over and over and over again. Like, we have 1,200 years at this point. Of God saying, here are the rules. The prophet saying, here are the rules. And then the priestly class being like, however. And now God is finally coming down himself to smack them.
This, I think, is maybe the harshest one, the entire one. So these Pharisees believe themselves to be the men who come after prophets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the lineage of Moses and Jeremiah and Isaiah and stuff like that. He says in verse 29, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because ye build the tombs of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous, and say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves. Ye are the children of them which killed the prophets.
Wolf.
My word. Yeah.
Wolf.
He's saying those stories that you read so much about and use as your justification for the laws and like the rule you have over people, you're the other side of that story. You're the bad guys in that story. You are the same people who sought to kill Elijah. You're the same people who tried to kill who did kill Isaiah. That's you, not them. That's you. Man.
Yeah. So when I said the question of what would Jesus do is more complicated than most people think,
Yep.
I meant it.
Yep.
Because sometimes
And
the
also,
answer is Jesus would roast the absolute hell out of you.
and sometimes people look at this story and they'll use stuff like this as justification for things of like condemning like the Jewish religion or stuff like that, right? Specifically, the office of the Pharisees at this point was to be the watchman for Christ to come. And Christ comes, but they are too caught up in money. They're too caught up in their power and of their reputation to notice him. So instead, they just rebuke him so that they can stay in charge. For one, that sounds like a lot of churches of a lot of different religions and a lot of Christian ones I know, even to this day. But two, it's not saying that their belief is what is condemning them. It is their method of belief. It's how far they've let their own pride and sickness get a hold of them and to put them into this position. He's not condemning an entire group of people here. He's condemning the people who are trying to get an entire group of people condemned because of their own power.
You're gonna be very mad at me for this, but once again, direct Lord of the Rings parallel. Like Tolkien was taking it straight from the Bible. I'm saying Tolkien was taking it from the Bible. The whole story of Aragorn coming back and being the king of Gondor, who has been foretold by prophecy for
it. Anyone who uses the Bible for anti-Semitism has no idea what they're talking about, because in this scene, Jesus is a Jew speaking to other Jews
about
and condemning Jewish leaders. Everyone who is in Jerusalem right now is a Jew. They are all the same race of people. Jesus is arguing for the people in the room. He's saying that the people who are standing here listening deserve better than what their rulers are giving them. Mm-hmm. He's not saying that, oh, you Pharisees, and also all of you other people that are the same race for some reason, this is to you. No, he's speaking, he was preaching to them, and then the Pharisees come to him with these questions, and then he condemns the leaders, right? Mm-hmm. For the sake of the people that are surrounding him, and mind you, himself. Anyone who like views it as like the Bible is an excuse for the Jewish stuff just reads the parts that they want to. Exactly. It doesn't hold up. Yeah.
But I've been
Gentiles don't show up till like 5 books later. We don't even register until way later in the Bible. This has nothing to do with any other. Yeah.
Good aside. I'm glad you did that.
Yeah. I was thinking, like, I'm getting pretty hot on the Pharisees. Let me clarify what that
exactly.
means.
I don't want this taken out of context to be something it's not.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it still can, but at least I'm on the record.
Exactly. Like, we'll defend you. But
Thank you.
So to finish the explaining where that allegory is, like when you read or watch the story, when you see how Aragorn is prophesied to come back and to take over and be king of Gondor once more and lead it into Golden Age, you get a few different things. You get Boromir, who says Gondor has no king, Gondor needs no king. If we're looking at the movie versions, that's what most people have seen. That's part of this. And then the Steward of Gondor still refusing to accept Aragorn as king. That's the same exact thing. Tolkien was a very Catholic author. So as you read through these books and things, as you read through Tolkien and Lewis and authors like that, look for the biblical narratives because you're going to see them. And they're really interesting. And they might help you to understand, what some of these stories are supposed to mean, because you can almost think of them as parables themselves.
Mm-hmm.
These men are taking the teachings of Christ and saying, here's something you can understand when you go to read this. So whenever you come across something, and don't assume that everyone who ever writes about the Bible through allegory is right, but keep those things in mind as you read, because you're going to see a lot of things that you're like, oh, okay, this is how this manifested in the culture as you look back and understand the way the past worked. Because I think a lot of people look back and they're like, oh, well, they were saying these things at the time, people believed this. And it's like, if you look into literature, you're going to see some very interesting manifestations of cultural religious beliefs and how they evolved. So just as a pop culture kind of aside, but we should move over to super chats.
I will briefly, if I could have a couple minutes about that parable I mentioned earlier.
Absolutely.
It's like super violent. So back in chapter 21, this is insane. He says this to the Pharisees. So Jesus preached a lot of the times in parables, because if you go to a group of people and you're just like, oh, you should hide the word of God in your heart and do these things, they're not going to take it. But when he walks up to him, he's like, there was a sower who had a field and he cast out his seeds. And then object lessons work better, right? So one of these object lessons, he had just got done giving one about how there were 2 children. One of them rejected their dad, and the other one followed their dad. And later the one that rejected returned to his father. And he says, basically an abridged version of the prodigal son. And he says to them, which one did the will of his father? And they're like, both. And he says, yes, but which one is more blessed? The one that didn't have the rejection before. And then he compares that to the Pharisees. Then he says in chapter 21 and verse 33, he just got done talking about John, how John the Baptist came forward and they rejected him. Then he says, here another parable. There was a certain householder which planted a vineyard and hanged it and hedged it round about, and digged a wine press in it, and built a tower, and let it out to husbandmen, and went into a far country. So we have a householder who builds this beautiful vineyard. He builds a fence around it. He puts a tower in it, and he leaves his husbandmen, which are effectively like servants, but they're like heads of the house, tenants, basically. He goes away and he's like, hey, you guys take care of the house, right? It says, and when the time of the fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the husbandmen that they might receive the fruits. So he's saying that the owner of the house now says, oh, it's time to collect. Servants, why don't you go to the husbandmen and they'll help you take care of the vineyard. It says, and the husbandmen took his servants and beat one and killed another and stoned another. Again, he sent other servants. more than the first, and they did unto them likewise. But last of all, he sent unto them his son, saying, they will reverence my son. But when the husbandmen saw the son, they said among themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and let us seize on his inheritance. And when they caught him and cast him out of the vineyard and slew him. When the Lord therefore of the vineyard cometh, what will he do unto those husbandmen? So obviously, I think we all know the picture he's planning, right? That Jesus, God establishes the souls for heaven. And he appoints a few people to stand guard and to make sure everything's okay, which would be the Pharisees, right? The people who are supposed to be in charge. But then when God sends his servants, which are the prophets, right? What happens? They get slaughtered. He sends more prophets. They also get slaughtered. Eventually, the owner says, I'll send my one and only son. They'll trust him, which of course is Jesus Christ. And Jesus is predicting his own death here by saying the husbandman killed the son as well. So he says, so pop question, class. What will the owner do to those husbandmen? It says, and they say unto him, he will miserably destroy those wicked men and will let out his vineyard unto other husbandmen, which shall render him the fruits in their season, which is a reference to us, the Gentiles, the other people who were let in. It says, Jesus saith unto them, did ye never read in the scriptures, the stone which the builders rejected, the same is become the head of the corner. This is the Lord's doing. Talking about like the people who were cast out, the people who rejected the prophets are now the ones running everything. And is it marvelous in your eyes? Therefore I say unto you, the kingdom of God shall be taken from you and given to a nation, bringing forth the fruits thereof. And whosoever shall fall on this stone shall be broken, but on whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. So that is, I think, the most brutal story he ever gave. To outright be like, hey, what if you killed everyone that I sent to tell you what to do, and then you kill me too? How do you think dad feels about that? What do you think the end game is there?
And when you look at it, there's historically there's no question about the series of events that follows. I mean, it's the Pharisees are no longer. There are no more Pharisees.
Yeah. After the death of Christ, bye. Yeah. Now I will say, again, to emphasize, everyone in this story is Jewish, right? The conversation. This is not about a group of people. This is about the rulers of the time who had gone astray and were leading their people astray.
Specifically the Pharisees.
This is literally the Pharisees. There's a reason every time they're mentioned, they are called the Pharisees. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
but
yeah,
all right.
That's some funny stories of Jesus being really violent, and then he arises for it. Yeah,
every once in a while, you gotta get up there.
You gotta play the hits. Yeah.
Okay, the hits. All right, now we should definitely go to super chats.
Yes,
we gotta zoom through these. Also, Isaiah, just really quick because we didn't realize you had to be somewhere at 8:30, but after we should talk about some stuff. We should set up time to talk about some stuff after the show.
Okay, cool.
All right, I'll text you.
Yep. Hey, fellas, likely can't watch the show live. Just wanted to say you rock. 2 questions. So when is the show coming to Spotify? And opinions on Joshua Graham from FONV.
Fallout New Vegas.
As a depiction of a Christian.
He's very cool.
Have you played through Fallout New Vegas?
Yes, it's been a while, but yeah.
I never got into the Fallout series. I was a Skyrim.
Joshua Graham's cool. He's a Mormon, and he says the line, "We can't expect God to do all the work."
Right.
He's loading a gun. That's his quote. He also has the line, "I survived because the fire within me was hotter than the fires around me." He's a cool character.
Yeah, that is cool. Jake the Movie Geek for $4.99 says, "Hey guys, this has become my new favorite podcast. It has inspired me to continue reading the Bible. What is a good study Bible that you'd recommend?"
I know everyone uses. Excuse me. It's been a while since I've used a study Bible. The Schofield, people like that one a lot. My parents like that one a lot. And the I think Graham had a version that everyone likes a lot. Let me go on to the next question. I'll type it in.
I have a Ryrie that I don't love some of the historical notes, but the theological notes are very good. Charles Ryrie, KJV.
There's one that's two people's names that I really
Harper
liked.
Collins?
My parents, no, it has a lot of stuff about like prophecy in it and whatnot. My parents have one, and I flipped through it a lot. I'll find it while you're talking.
In my opinion, the best study Bible is having just any old ASV, ESV, like a solid translation, and then a Strong's and a couple of commentaries. That's going to be your best bet. But for an individual,
Spurgeon Bible, that was one of them. That yeah, it's a good one. Spurgeon, yeah.
But for specific Bibles, for just an all-in-one solution, basically anything that's been mentioned is going to be solid.
Mm-hmm.
Bible Gateway is also awesome as a website.
The only thing I can offer to that conversation is I can't hear the word Schofield and not think of 1917 at this point. So, moving on. Mr. Zen 608 for $20 says, "Greetings. Last stream I asked about the pseudoepigraphica. Yeah, spelled a little differently here, but neglected to mention which I meant. But it's specifically about Paul's letters. Also, would love to know some of your crackpot theories about Christianity."
Paul's pseudoepigraphica. Paul. Huh? I have to look it up.
Are they asking about like non-canon Paul letters?
Yeah,
probably.
Well, pseudoepigraphia is stuff that is supposed to be like it's attributed to an author, but it's not actually by that author.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure Paul wrote more letters than what are in the Bible.
But I'm trying to figure out which specific one.
Yeah,
he's talking about. Unless he means
crackpot theories about Christianity. Sometimes I think maybe time doesn't exist.
Interesting.
I think for me that the Garden of Eden was present on Earth, just in a separate dimension.
There we go. That's a crackpot theory. That's good.
Incredible. Odachi for $12.34. Love the specificity. Saying, "Praise God, y'all are back. I had a request last time for the thief on the cross passage. Also, could y'all talk about the poetic parables of Jesus to Genesis 22?
We can in the future.
Wait, hold on. What was the one about the thief on the cross?
Just the story, I think.
Yeah, just a request last time for the thief on the cross
cover
passage.
it. Yeah.
We're gonna have to start writing down.
Yeah, so thief on the cross and the parallels between Jesus and Genesis 22.
Genesis 22.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
Gotcha.
gonna look at that really quick.
Keep going.
Meanwhile, White Trash Panda for $2 says, "Mr. T voice, I pity the God.
I pity the Lord."
I'm pretty sure that's Genesis 22 is about when Abraham and Isaac go, and Abraham's to sacrifice Isaac, and then the ram appears, which is of course indicative of like Jesus' son, God's son in Jesus being a sacrifice. Yeah.
Must be Carlos Sainz, who gave us a donation because it says Smooth Operator for $5, says, "You guys have definitely brought thousands of people closer to Christ, which is what it's all about, brother." With a nice little heart in there. Jesus is certainly proud, and you are good men.
Thank you.
Means a lot. Thank you.
Jacob Height for $2 just gave us a nice like. ASA for $5 says, "What is the Bible's stance on loving aliens? Does it matter which version you reference? Asking for a friend."
Aliens.
I'm assuming extraterrestrial beings.
And not immigrants.
Correct.
Yeah.
I would assume. Yeah.
I would like to believe that's what we're discussing.
I don't believe in aliens, but if you do, then
I'm with him.
This what?
Fermi paradox, man.
No way.
Where the hell is everybody?
Are you a Fermi paradox person too?
No, I just don't believe in them. Like
really interesting. Yeah. I so disagree with the Fermi paradox considering the scale of the universe.
You're telling me it's 14.9 billion years old, and
well, now it's about twice as old as
if there is an alien race out there, I can't wait to shoot them.
I wonder what that tastes like.
They're gonna find out what "made in the image of God" means real quick. I tell you.
So
and on the first day, God made the 30-06 rifle.
Yeah, brother.
So it seems like you must have been playing some Helldivers recently.
Actually, I haven't played it yet, but all my friends have.
Yeah, I haven't played it yet either.
Okay. I haven't had time to play anything lately.
That's a lie. I've been seeing you play Gray Zone. Shut up.
I dabbled. I've got maybe 8 hours on it. Yeah.
I opened up Gray Zone for the first time and played a few minutes, and I was like, "Oh, Isaiah would love this."
Yeah, it needs more.
Oh yeah,
but I love the bones of it a lot.
yeah. I think it's got good structure. I'm just not ready to play it hardcore yet.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you the last video game I played or when.
Train Simulator.
No, actually, it was probably World of Tanks.
Have
Who
you ever
knows?
played
Anyway,
Train Simulator?
wait, what?
Have you ever played Train Simulator?
Maybe. You got to remember, I'm the most autistic one in the room. Moving on. Rajko says, hi, Isaiah and Aidens. I'm a huge fan of this podcast and your content, and it's awesome you guys are live on my birthday. Happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
God bless you all.
What was the name?
His name was Rajko, Rajko.
Well, specifically Rajko. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Rajko.
Indeed. Spaz the Space Wizard for $2 says, hello, Goonies. Is grilling Mormons biblical?
Well, you're a space wizard, so we've already gone over our response to you. You have to die.
Really?
Yeah, but I don't think you should grill. When you say grilling, do you mean theologically grilling, or do you mean like on a grill?
I think they mean theologically. Maybe, I don't know.
I would argue that
I don't agree with Mormonism, but yeah, sure, fight them on it. I guess don't kill them.
Yeah, exactly. If it's something where like it's a consensual argument, and you sat down, you were like, let's discuss this. Yeah, go ahead, grill the Mormons, but I wouldn't just if you pass a Mormon on the street, be like,
you talk to you.
Yeah, explain the Trinity or explain why the Trinity isn't a thing to me right now. Like that's not cool. Don't do that.
And also don't put them on top of burning charcoal either.
Yes, that's important. Gas, however.
Incredible. Matt Quimmett for $20 says, question to all of you. If you were going to convert a fictional character into a prophet, who would it be and what part of the Old Testament would you put them in?
I don't know. Are we going for laughs or sincerity?
Either. It's
laughs.
This. What?
Laughs.
Tom Bombadil. We said fictional
Deadpool.
Character, right?
Yeah.
He's okay. Somebody people would actually know. I'm gonna need a minute.
I'm gonna say Anakin Skywalker just to really throw a wrench
I'm
in
also
everything.
gonna say Anakin.
The guy who's like, okay, all right. Let's see. For laughs, part of me wants to say Forrest Gump.
Just keep going.
Hot take, he already is. Anyway, moving on.
Captain Jack
Jacob
Sparrow,
Hyatt.
actually. Captain Jack Sparrow, 100%.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
I'm changing my answer.
Jacob Hyatt for $10 says, just an offer, but in practicing Mormon, I assume he meant I'm a practicing Mormon, and would be a game to answer questions about it live or via messages already in Lore Lodge Discord, the Chin P97.
Yeah, we can look into doing something on maybe like one of the personal streams.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I just don't like to bring people on to the big ones until I've had a chance to talk to them because you never know.
Yep. Hyde gave us $1.
Thank you.
Thanks. Code C for $19.99 says, I got a drive ahead of me tomorrow, so I'll watch y'all then. Just wanted to say Isaiah's passion for these stories got me to start reading the Bible again, and I see it in a new light. Love the history of it all, too.
It means a lot, man. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Katie for $4.99 says, Aiden mentioned notes on homosexuality before. Was that real or a joke? If so, please give cliff notes on it, gay and Christian, in parentheses.
What?
I assume you've mentioned...
Can I read the...
Yeah,
Can I read it? Aiden mentioned notes on homosexuality before. Was that real or a joke? I honestly don't know what the reference here is.
I think you were discussing the legitimacy of people's arguments about homosexuality in the Bible. This was like several streams ago.
I cannot remember what I said well enough. I mean, to give clarification on what the Bible says, the Old Testament says that it's specifically the act that's... All right, then. Ella is in the studio. Can you grab her before she knocks something over?
Yeah.
The stream just ends.
Hi.
Immediately.
Hello. Hey, Archie. Okay, they're here. Hi. All right. Well, anyway, with that handled, here, if you can slide her over to me, I can take her.
Can't really.
Ella, come here. Come here, you. All right, there we go. Anyway, I was probably saying that there's a difference between the idea of homosexual attraction versus homosexual activity. Biblically, I wouldn't be able to get into details without knowing more about what I had said at the time.
Fair.
But it's generally that the act is what is considered to be sinful biblically. That said, I personally have no issue with people who are gay, so
Good enough.
that's the only clarification I can really give. Is like, yeah, Bible says this. I feel this way.
Fair.
You know.
Daddy Falcor for $10 says, you guys should do a breakdown on the movie The Assassins 33 AD. It's supposed Christian movie about Islamic extremists getting a time machine.
I am concerned.
We're gonna move on.
To me. No.
Moving.
Isaiah's like, I am definitely avoiding any remotely controversial questions.
I think that's probably the smartest move. Losperai for $4.99 says, Wendigoon, despite your dislike for modern 21 pilots, you're the best. Didn't know you had a dislike, but fair enough.
I mean,
I'll do that.
He's not alone in that one.
Yeah, you're also not a fan. I'm neutral. I'll do that top lore video for you too, or don't worry.
Pilot's lore.
Yeah. And top 3 Star Wars characters. I mean, Obi-Wan Kenobi is always top.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to have to go with Admiral Akbar and Max Rebo. Rounding out the top 3.
Ooh, you just went in a totally different direction than I anticipated. Okay. So, yeah, anyway, what about you, Isaiah?
A huge Star Wars guy. I'd probably be pretty basic, like Darth Maul, Boba Fett, and Anakin. Yeah.
Nice.
I put Obi-Wan at the top, and then I probably have to go, I think Wedge Antilles has always been one of my favorites. You get him more in the animated stuff, but then after that, ooh, that's a hard one. Ooh, Pre-Vizsla
Fair enough.
from Clone Wars. Cool character. Evil guy, but cool.
Considering we're not going to get it to all of these in the time frame, I'm going to skip around and go for the most relevant for
Sounds
the
good.
Bible. Mahogany for $4.99 says, how fluid is the Bible's interpretation? Is there one denomination whose teachings are considered the most correct?
Well, I would argue that the fact that there's
Yes,
so many
whatever
denominations,
denomination you are, that is the one that's the most correct. Yeah.
it's like if there wouldn't be denominations. The Catholics will say they're right. The Orthodox will say they're right. Protestants are always going to say we're right. I'm a Methodist, and my opinion is that nobody's right, and nobody's been right for about 1700 years. So,
Fair. Source Energy for $4.99. A fair warning to both of you. This seems like a question that also requires its own video, but I'm going to ask it just in case.
Sure.
How and why are we different from angels, and can angels who have sinned in this world be forgiven as we are in time and not in eternity?
We do have an episode on angels. We have 2 episodes on angels. But yeah, I mean, the basic answer is that they are purely divine and we are purely of the earth until death. Like, our souls are from heaven, but our bodies are from earth, whereas angels in both cases are from heaven, is the kind of the basic version. Angels also are certainly capable of changing their physical form, depending on where they're appearing, and they have divine power, so they're able to influence events in not the same way that God can, but you do see angels that are capable of doing things that are greater than things humans can do. So that's kind of the basics. Isaiah, what are your thoughts?
We are 2 different things. So the rules, I'm a human. I know how the rules work for me. Never been an angel, so I'm not sure what their playbook is.
We know there's one rule at least, which is that you're not supposed to have children with humans.
Correct.
That one's pretty explicit.
Fair enough. And then considering the time, let's call this one the last one. Source Energy again for $4.99 saying, could there have been multiple floods? One for the old world and one for the wicked people in Noah's time.
What? Aren't those are the same thing?
I
What do they mean by old world?
Yeah, the pre-Noah world.
Well,
But that
you'll
would
never
be the
guess what
antediluvian world.
Yeah,
I
you'll
think,
never guess what separates the pre-Noah world from the post-Noah world.
yeah. So the terminology used is usually antediluvian, and nobody really says post-diluvian, but that would be the terminology. Most people say antediluvian being before the flood and then afterwards. So could there have been floods that flooded the entire world? Theoretically, yeah, but they're not mentioned in the book, at least. And they probably wouldn't have had any effect on humanity if they did happen.
Fair. All right. Well, given the time frame, I'd say we probably want to wrap there, right? It's 8:25.
8:25? Yeah, I know you guys.
If you guys want to keep going without me, that's totally
we
fine.
can keep going. At least I can keep going.
I gotta edit the video for tomorrow, so.
All right, I guess I can keep going. Although you got to use that computer to edit the video for tomorrow. How many questions are left? That came in before 7:45.
Can't see the numbers on my phone.
If you give a little expandy boy here.
On this guy?
Go. Okay, and do this. See?
Got it. Quite a number.
What?
Quite a number.
All right. Well, how about you and I go for another 15 minutes?
Okay.
That fair?
That works.
All right.
Cool.
Okay.
Sounds good, fellas. I will see you later. To everyone who donated and stopped in, it means the world. Thank you all very much. And I'll talk to you boys later.
All right, sounds good. I'll shoot you a text.
Cool. See y'all. Bye.
And then we're going to go...
What you doing?
I was just going to bring...
Oh, just make one of us bigger than the other? Here, go click off of studio mode. Just click studio mode again on the left side. There you go. Now you can just grab whatever you need to grab.
Cool. And we'll full screen.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, guys.
There we go.
It's so pretty. So nice.
All right.
What else we got?
So let me scroll back up here. Alfarius Omegon for $5 says, "Good news, Operation Whack a Heretic was a success. All the heretics in my town have been shown the error of their ways."
Okay, I don't recall Operation Whack a Heretic being launched, but I hope they deserved it.
I also don't, but here we are.
Otherwise, I mean, I can point you to some good lawyers, I guess.
Fair. Alfarius Megan again for $5 says, "The only causality was the leader of the local coven of Catholics who burst into flames when the word of God made impact upon his face."
What is this? What?
I think it's a continuation to the previous one I just read.
The one you just read?
Yeah.
Okay, read it again.
I'll read them both sequentially. Alfarius and Megon for $5. "Good news, Operation Whack a Heretic was a success. All the heretics in my town have been shown the error of their ways. The only causality was the leader of the local coven of Catholics who burst into flames when the word of God made impact upon his face."
All right. Well, I'm going to need to do some interpretation of that message in order to understand what it means, but okay.
Fair enough.
Congratulations, or I'm sorry that happened to you.
Incredible. Logan Giddings for $4.99. This one was for Isaiah, asking, it was off topic, but do you remember the beautiful little sausages? Because he sure wishes he didn't. I don't want to know either.
I don't know. No, not even remotely do I want to know.
Ludium Gambit for $20 says, "Hi, when I was a teenager teaching 4 to 5-year-olds, or I was a teenager teaching to 4 to 5-year-olds, recently I moved up to teaching 7 to 10-year-olds, which seemed like a big jump. How should I approach teaching this age? Also, I'm going to go please do a video on the Love Canal tragedy." Well, we're actually planning.
We might do a video on the Love Canal tragedy. Yeah. So I mean, going from those age groups, you got to remember that kids who are under 7 years old, it's mostly just about imparting good moral lessons. I mean, the stories might work because it's, hey, God said do this. 7 to 10-year-olds, you're going to need a little bit more explanation about how things work in the world, but you got to make sure it's something they can understand at their level. So you're going to start having questions. But what I would do basically is, I would have them maybe fill out, maybe give them a sheet that says, like, what are your thoughts on God? How do you feel? Like, what are some questions you have? Combine all that, put it together, and then say, all right, well, the kids all had questions about these topics. How can I then take the biblical lesson and format it in a way that's relevant to their experience? And I would say do it that way, because, 4 to 5-year-olds aren't going to be able to tell you a thing about their inner thoughts. They barely comprehend that they have inner thoughts. 7 to 10-year-olds, they're more inquisitive. They're beginning to question the world around them. So let them ask the questions and then build the lesson around their questions. Remember that teaching somebody anything only works if they have an interest in learning it. If they don't have any interest in learning it, it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. Make it relevant to them, and they'll retain it.
Good plan. Isaiah Scrape for $20 says, I just wanted to say, imagine inventing time travel and traveling back in time to meet Jesus. Since Jesus is God and God knows everything, would he talk to you in English? How scary would that be?
So there's actually a lot of questions about whether or not Jesus spoke Greek, because he spoke Aramaic and seems to have been able to speak Hebrew as well. They're very similar languages, so it's not super surprising. But there are questions about whether or not he spoke Greek, and if any of the passages in the New Testament might have been originally spoken in Greek. It's hard to say. I think if you went back in time, God would be all-knowing, and so he should theoretically know the English language. Would God be capable of speaking to you in English? Would Jesus be capable of speaking to you in English? Possibly. Guys.
We gotta not have them in the studio when we're live.
Yeah, I don't know why they're in the studio. Hang on, let me go shut that door.
Yep.
You can keep reading questions.
Yep, I'm trying to pick up on here where I left off on the phone.
All right, I'm back.
Nice. It's weird because they don't match entirely.
What do you mean?
The questions.
How so?
Hang on. I might have figured it out. 1 second.
Like timeline-wise?
Yeah, they're jumbled by comparison, so I'll just go off of this.
Jumbled where?
The order in which the super chat supposedly came in is different on this than on this.
Streamlabs is probably the more correct.
All right, I'll use that then. Get that. Totally Not JMO for $5.69 says, the milk pities the gourd. I can profess this, for I have seen the backside of the milk in a vision that it gave me. Be fearful, Gunnusius, it may come.
I need to go speak to Father Peter.
Yeah, valid.
I for the first time in my life, I had the urge to go to confession. And not even for something I did, just for something I heard.
Amazing. Brandon G for $5 says, finally get to see y'all live. Thank you for all the content on the Bible. I was wondering if Isaiah is going to make more Sunday studies.
From what I remember, he said he wanted to. It was more of an issue of timing.
Yeah.
I hope he does. I think he does great work on that. But I know that, algorithmically, YouTube being what it is, and right now, I don't know how affected he is by it, because he's one of the bigger guys, but a lot of creators right now are feeling some burn because YouTube changed their algorithm again, and, we've been in contact with YouTube, and they're telling us there's no algorithmic effects on our channel, that, we're not shadow banned, there's nothing there. But at the same time, you guys told us, we polled you on the Lore Lodge channel, 18,000 people responded, and 58% of them said they weren't seeing our posts, that we weren't showing up in their recommended, that they weren't getting notifications. Just to be clear, for all those guys who are here from our channel who watch our stuff, or if you're interested in what we do and you don't watch our stuff yet, we post videos at 4 p.m. on Friday every week. If the video is not up at 4 p.m. on Friday, it's because either there was some sort of error with the upload that caused us to have to re-upload, or because I just simply forgot to actually schedule it in time. But yeah, videos should be up on our channel every Friday at 4 p.m. That never changes. Like that never varies deliberately.
As 4 p.m. Eastern
4
specifically.
p.m. Eastern time. Yes.
Yep. Mitchell989 for $5 from Canadian $5 says, super excited you guys have a regular upload schedule again. Keep up the great work, boys. P.S. Could I get a birthday shout out for the big 30?
Absolutely. Happy birthday, man.
Just did that. Caster super chatted $5 says, dude, that scene in JCSS Ted N version rocked so hard.
JCSS?
Yeah.
What's that?
No idea. Oh, Jesus Christ Superstar, maybe?
That sounds about right. Would you believe I've never seen it?
I went to Catholic school. They made us watch it in like 3rd grade. So.
I have never seen Jesus Christ Superstar, and I have never seen Passion of the Christ.
Interesting. I've never seen the latter.
I probably should.
Fair. Mr. Rose for $10 says, I wonder what Jesus' most favorite dinosaur would be.
I feel like there's got to be a joke in there somewhere, right?
Probably.
Oh no, I feel like the guy would have vibed with Brachiosaurus.
Probably. Aiden L for $1.99 says, is Kenneth Copeland a demon?
I don't know enough about Kenneth Copeland to tell you. My guess is probably not. But I mean, like I said, I don't know enough about the guy. If you're asking the question, I assume it's because he's got some questionable biblical teachings. A lot of people aren't possessed so much as they are. Let me put it this way: a lot of people aren't nearly as possessed by demons as they are by money and fame.
Fair. Drewish AF super chatted $5 saying, "This is the first time."
She's Drewish. You're
Spaceballs, right? Yeah. This is the first time I've caught Weird Bible Podcast live. I love y'all and you guys, especially Isaiah. Strengthen my faith. Most importantly, dost thou pity the gourd?
Oh, hell yeah.
Of course we do. It's your band.
Yeah. Which actually played its first show last month.
Yeah.
Yeah, in April. Was terrifying. I have never had to play my own music before.
How'd it go?
It actually went pretty well. From what I'm told, I did fine. I felt nervous as hell the whole time, but
Shocker. You performed well.
I definitely could have been better. Like, I have notes for myself, but I think a lot of it was the fact that I was playing a lot more. I was a lot more responsible for guitar than I expected to be, so that was okay. That's not an attack.
No, I know it's not. I'm just gonna say hopefully I'll be able to join at some point in the near future. I was supposed to play lead guitar, but I've never played on stage ever, and I did not have enough time to prepare.
Yeah.
So, totally not JMO for $2.49 says, Goonie Boy, have you heard of the manga Berserk? I'm gonna say he probably has in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, probably.
Totally not JMO for $5.57 says, Mattis, I have the book from the 1870s that has Cruden's Concordance in it. Cruden's Concordance in it. Should I use it when I study the Bible?
I think it would definitely be a cool thing to look at. I would suggest you use Strong's. It's more updated. But if you got an old one, definitely keep it handy. That's cool. And if you want to send us some pictures, shoot them to our email, because I'm always curious about old books.
Riazilla for $5 says, also render to Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's. The coin was Caesar's image bearer.
Mm-hmm.
We are to be image bearers of God.
Mm-hmm.
Totally not JMO for $2 says, I might go to Alaska with Mattis.
Ooh, do it.
It wouldn't be just Mattis, my boy.
Yeah, he's coming too. Yeah, for anybody who's interested in that, we still have spots left on our trip to Alaska. It is August, 26th through 1st?
I think so.
1st of September?
Yeah.
Something like that. We're going to be spending 7 days there. It's going to be hiking, camping. We're going to, cooking our own food while camping. It's going to be a lot of fun. So Anchorage, it's going to be Anchorage, Denali, and then Seward. While we're in Seward, we're going to shoot part of one of our videos. Probably not going to be like the whole normal camera setup we have, because we're not bringing that, but we're going to have some GoPros. Aiden and I are going to be hanging out. Talking about missing people in Seward, Alaska. So
it'll be a good time. Tyquise Jr. for $9.99 says, this may not be the place, so I apologize, but when again can you look into October 2nd, 1968 in Mexico? Thank you. Also, boys, this content I enjoy this content because I'm learning about something I wouldn't otherwise know.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying the show, and I will definitely suggest. You said it was October 2nd.
1968 in Mexico.
All right, I can definitely look into that.
Yeah.
We should be getting to the point where we're now close to everything that came out in through.
Yeah, we got 3 more left.
Okay.
Matt Quimmett for $20, thank you, says, the Pharisees would have been a lot quieter if Jesus had pulled up on a T-Rex with an M60 in one hand and a 500 kilogram stratagem in the other.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus is not the type to use the cluster bomb strategy because he's aware he would kill all 12 of his disciples.
Yep. Nojo Only Zool for $10 says, for every like this video gets, Stephen Furtick has to read an actual page of the Bible.
I don't know who Stephen Furtick is.
Neither do I.
Look that up, though.
And then the last one before the time that we had to run out, Iwoava, semicolon on, super chatted, I love the parables that Christ would tell. Yeah, valid.
He's a composer of elevation worship.
Interesting. Yeah, that's it.
That last one again, can you read it?
It was Iowava, semicolon, on, I love the parables that Christ would tell.
Yes. I think that it's some of the best storytelling when it comes to trying to teach a lesson.
Yeah.
Like, the man knew what he was doing.
No doubt.
But all right, that does take us through the end of everything that came before 7:45. Aiden does have to finish editing the video for tomorrow. I have to both pack for going to my sister's graduation, and I also have to get more research done. So this is going to be such a fun next few days.
We're always busy.
That said, congratulations, Ainsley. You done good.
You done good, champ.
I knew you had it in you.
All right.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for watching. We'll tell Isaiah you all said that he is very beautiful and deserving of your praise. And yeah, I guess that's it. New video tomorrow. It's on a Missing 411 thing on the Lore Lodge.
Yeah, we're back to Missing 411.
Yeah. Also, if you haven't seen the Freemasonry video, please watch it.
There was a lot of work in that. Anyway.
All right. Anyway, see you guys.
Night, everybody.